market has its limits.
Most economists will tell you that it's a fungible product. You buy some here, you buy less over there, and it doesn't really make any difference. That's true if you have supply and demand roughly the same and sort of growing at the same level. The Chinese buy Unocal here. That means they're not buying something over here. Someone else steps in and buys that. It all works out in the marketplace. There's a different kind of market analysis, though, and that is if you assume rapidly growing demand because of India and China, and if you assume level supply, or supply not growing as fast as demand, then you end up with potentially different market behavior, because at that point you have shortages, and you have companies hoarding, or countries hoarding in effect. And what the Chinese have been attempting to do is not simply to buy barrels of oil, but to buy productive capacity. So if they bought up productive capacity and then decide in that kind of market situation to reserve it all for themselves and not sell it on the marketplace, that would make shortages much worse and might contribute to oil supply problems here, which would be a security issue. For a bunch of communists, they've turned out to be very good capitalists.
Ken Cortis is one of the most influential commentators on this new business-oriented China. Then the managing director of investment bank Goldman Sachs Asia, he was one of the main go-betweens in CNOOC's bid for Unocal. And as a Canadian, he was well placed to have some perspective on the whole affair.
Ça aurait été une acquisition très importante. Ça aurait été la plus grande acquisition d'une entreprise chinoise dans le monde jusqu'à ce moment-là. Enfin, l'énergie n'est pas comme acheter et vendre des yaourts. C'est au centre de la vie politique. C'est pas un marché complètement transparent et libre. Il y a des enjeux stratégiques derrière toute société, grande société de pétrole. À penser que l'ambassadeur actuel des USA à Bagdad, c'est un ancien de Unocal. Le président actuel de l'Afghanistan, c'est un ancien de Unocal. Le premier entente signé par le nouveau gouvernement afghan après le renversement du régime des talibans était en faveur de Unocal. Donc l'énergie politique, économie, tout ça s'imbrique, et donc acheter et vendre des sociétés ou même des actifs dans ce secteur relève de la haute politique aussi bien que le cœur économique. Je crois que l'affaire de Unocal a été un réveil pour beaucoup de monde. C'était un réveil pour l'Amérique, puisqu'elle a vu en face maintenant qu'il y avait un pays qui pourrait à terme leur rivaliser. C'était un réveil aussi pour la Chine, qui peut-être jusqu'à ce moment-là, d'une manière un peu innocente, comme ils étaient nouveaux au capitalisme mondial et jouaient un peu le jeu, qui voyaient que les choses n'étaient pas aussi simples que ça. Depuis ce moment, la Chine a intensifié son regard, je dirais, mondial dans la recherche de l'énergie. Et donc, vous avez vu depuis cet échec une activité intense.
Rebuffed in their attempt to acquire Western production capacity, the Chinese had to revise their strategy. China has since been looking for new alliances with any oil-producing country, whatever the politics of the regime might be.
这个属于这个国家的政策大的方面。我能说的就是我们的中国海洋石油，我们现在正在努力跟各界的朋友合作。我们的就是说，合作目的就是说，不仅是保证我们的能源供应，而且能保证跟那个世界各国那个相互合作，我们共同发展。跟美国，我们过去有过那个最明显的一个例子，就是我们想收购尤尼科，我们是完全按照这个市场法则来运营的，但是最后呢，这个的结果你们都看到了。我们希望我们今后跟美国方面合作更好的，还是我们就是完全按照商业规则来运营。
In the battle for oil, China believes it will always find the United States in its way. Hence the alliances China forges with countries hostile to the United States. Iran, an international pariah, sees China as an important ally.
La Chine a un avantage considérable sur toutes les puissances asiatiques dans la mesure où c'est le seul pays d'Asie qui a un droit de veto au Conseil de sécurité. Et donc, dans cette perspective, courtiser la Chine pour les pays, surtout qui ont des problèmes au Conseil de sécurité, comme l'Iran à cause de la question du nucléaire, le fait que la Chine peut faire des pressions au Conseil de sécurité est un avantage considérable auquel les Iraniens sont très sensibles. Les Chinois ont servi leurs intérêts jusqu'à présent puisqu'ils ont ralenti le processus d'accusation de l'Iran et aussi, surtout, ils ont ralenti le processus du vote des sanctions qui pourraient créer des problèmes économiques et même sociaux pour l'Iran.
The second example of this not too scrupulous search for new alliances is China's major oil supplier, Sudan. Since the early 90s, Western companies have been leaving Sudan because of the danger and to avoid supporting a regime that terrorizes its own people. The Chinese have no such qualms. In the name of non-interference, Beijing turns a blind eye to mass expulsions from entire regions that are rich in oil. First it was southern Sudan, now it's the Darfur region. Its people, living near a major part of Sudan's oil reserves, are terrorized by militias set up and armed by the central government. The fate of populations like these is largely decided here at the UN Security Council in New York. When it comes to Iran and Sudan, the international community struggles to find common ground. China threatens to use its veto to prevent any meaningful sanctions against its oil allies.
In the case of Sudan and Iran, there are specific problems because these are countries that are violators of international law. Sudan has a lot to do with the genocide in Darfur. Iran is facing world opposition regarding its nuclear ambitions. So these are two countries that defy the international consensus. And because China has a veto power in the Security Council, those two countries really want China to be on their side. So they make sure to tie themselves into China and to offer China unprecedented oil and gas deals in order to make sure that China gives them the insurance, the policy that they need, which is the veto power in the Security Council.
Marian Zumbulev is the UN representative of the International Crisis Group, a non-government organization that has taken a strong stand on Darfur.
We have not seen China support any single resolution of the Security Council on Sudan, on Darfur, I should emphasize, that imposes pressure through sanctions, strong language, things like that. In fact, China has gone the opposite way. China has tried to weaken various drafts proposed by other member states to impose pressure on the government of Sudan regarding the issue of Darfur, which has both delayed some of those resolutions and has also, again, weakened the language. And even on resolutions which, in the end, were agreed on in the spirit of compromise, the draft resolution, the text of the draft resolution, on some of these, China again abstained. If an original draft resolution says, for example, we should impose an arms embargo on the country of Sudan, China would say, well, that's perhaps